Good morning. Good morning. Jenny, are you there?
Hi, Aileen. I'm
Hello.
here. I'm just in a sweatshirt, you know, so I'm not gonna turn my video on, but I'm here.
That's okay.
Open your chat, Aileen.
Oh, there you are.
All right, I'm gonna mute, okay? And I'll be listening, so I'll just wait for your prompts. I've got the videos ready.
Oh, that's wonderful. I feel.
And coffee's brewing and bubbling away back here, so.
Can you hear me well?
Yep, I can hear you great.
Okay, so I don't need to change anything on volume.
No, it sounds great to me.
Okay.
And you look great too.
Thank you. I have no idea how many we'll have with the Masters golf tournament going on and the coffee time and classes, other classes starting at 11, but we'll give it about 5 minutes after the hour to see how many we have and just get started, okay?
That sounds great, Aileen.
Okay.
And we're recording already, so we'll cut this part out for the recording and we'll have it on the website.
Okay, and if if you want to send, I'll try and keep checking chat in case you need to get a message to me.
Sounds good, Aileen.
Yeah, that'll be the best way, I think. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself now, but I can still hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning, Eileen. It worked. I got in here.
Well, you're pretty sharp if you get in here.
Sort of different, but I pushed a few buttons and it worked.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. We don't have you don't have your picture. Your
Oh,
video isn't on, but I'd
I,
like to see you if you can do that.
well, I'll try it, but then I might turn it off again too.
Well, it's all right.
Where is it here?
Sit up. A little camera. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Light off above me, I see. All this fancy muttered stuff.
No, it's a lot different, isn't it? I was thinking about you last night and thinking, gee, I haven't connected with Nancy. I've got to do that tomorrow. I didn't know it would be on video. There you are.
There.
Yeah. You might want to pull the blind down if you have one on your window. Do you have one on your window?
I've got some, but they're not real dark ones, so they really don't do that much difference. So
that's fine.
That's why I just kind of, a lot of times when I go, I do a lot of the life classes on Zoom. That's, and I usually watch them without my video on.
That's all right too. Well, we don't know how many we'll have today with everything else that's going on, but we're going to wait a little while, and so glad you joined. So how have the days been? What have you been up to?
Not a whole lot, like everybody else, I guess. But they've been pretty good. It's on and off. Sometimes I feel good. Sometimes I don't feel so good, but.
Right. I think that's what we're all going through too. Even,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's never easy as we progress into winter.
No.
I think everyone has this built-in reaction to, oh, here it comes.
That's right.
The next few months. So, but it's a day by day thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Hour by hour, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you in touch with all your relatives? Are they all fine?
Oh yeah, I talk to my sisters every day.
Oh, good.
Everybody's doing fine.
Well,
my one good and a great nephew were here last week because he had my great nephew had some surgery, which all went well. So I saw them, in person. That always helps too.
Good. Well, it's good to hear that they're fine. That's what we want. Well, good morning, you folks over there, Bob.
Good morning, Eileen. It is so good to see you.
You too. And I can see the knitter is still at it.
Yeah, she's crocheting an Afghan.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Oh, that's the wrong side here.
Beautiful. Good for you. I'm beginning to think maybe those needles are attached to your fingers.
They are.
I had a cousin in England who could walk around and knit. And
wow.
I mean, she would produce so many sweaters and so many things in a year. And I never was able to do that. I have to concentrate. Hi, Grace. Hi, Pam. Good to see you. Well, how are you all?
Good. We're doing okay.
Good. I'm glad.
Working a ton, but that's fortunate.
Good. And things are still buzzing at your plant.
They are. Yeah. My job changed. We went through a huge restructuring a couple of months ago, and they asked me to be the director of operations there for the 2 plants there and one down in Iowa. So.
Are you exhausted?
I'm a little tired. It's been, yeah, it's been extremely challenging just managing in the time of COVID. Is a tremendous challenge.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And getting back, just getting acquainted with the people who you haven't had direct contact with before takes so much energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Pat. Glad, glad to see you.
Really?
Yeah. We'll wait about, a couple more minutes here, and then we'll get started.
We just let out the coffee hour and told everyone to rush over here.
There's a lot going on. I said this morning that with the Masters on TV, Masters tournament for all those golf people, there's a lot going on. So, well, hi, Joel. Hi, Catherine, and there's Mary. I see you all.
I had a little trouble making the link work this morning, so I ended up going to a different place where the link was, and then I got in.
Good.
Yeah,
And
me too, the one in the email didn't work.
No.
Well, it's always a test of fortitude with Zoom, isn't it?
Just have to go a little farther and look a little harder.
That's right. And I want to welcome folks from Nashville. Bruce Buller and Diana Nelson are here. How nice to have you along.
It's great to be here and see you all.
Great. That's wonderful. Yeah, and Pat Robbie is here, and there's Ted. What a group. That's great. We'll just let a few more get on, and then we'll take off here. There's Elizabeth. Unknown caller. Wait a moment, I have a call here. Hello. Well, that's that.
I think it was great.
Well, hello, Elizabeth.
Hi there, good morning.
Good morning.
You just revved us all up in the worship service with that great sermon that showed our history and our future and everything combined. Was wonderful.
It's a pretty wonderful story to get to tell.
Yeah, it was put together so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, right. Well, I want to welcome each of
Not feeling welcome.
Technology is great until it isn't.
When it works, it's wonderful.
Yes, yes.
Sure, she'll rejoin.
Looks like we lost our speaker.
We
Yep.
did.
I'm gonna call her.
I trust she'll come back.
Yeah.
That's the way Zoom is.
It is. It's good to see all of your faces.
It's good to see you.
I
Hi,
really
Laura.
appreciate Zoom
Hi.
because we
Hi,
could see
everybody.
Where are you coming to us from, Laura?
St. Paul today
Okay.
as an interloper.
Oh, no such thing.
Did you lose mom?
Yes.
Yeah, it says, please hang on.
Oh. Oh, well.
Yes.
How's everybody? I know some of you and I don't know some others of you. So I'm Eileen's daughter.
Hi, Laura.
We can maybe go around and introduce ourselves. That would be a good thing. I'm Elizabeth.
We're, we're Bob and Daphne. Bob Fleetwood, Daphne Soleil. We're married.
Hi, Bob and Dad. Oh, I love the knitting.
Yes.
I'm Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Kathy.
Hi, Joel. Nice to see you.
We're Dick and Kathy Eastray. Hi.
We're Diana Nelson and Bruce Bowler, and we're married.
Oh, nice going.
Nancy, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you too, Kathy. Hi, I'm Nancy Wheeler.
And Pat. Pat, how are you feeling?
I'm getting better, thank you.
That's good. I
Good to
think
see
you have
you.
an elegant, soft thing around your neck, and it makes me happy.
Prayer shawl.
What
Oh,
was I saying about Zoom? Also, I got a call from Marita and she can't get on. So
We had trouble also. I did
So did we.
too.
Yeah.
The link wasn't right.
I know, well, I don't know what to do about that.
There's a
So-
link that was in a previous email, probably about Wednesday, and that link worked for me.
Okay.
Well, I copied the number
Yeah.
of the
Yeah, that's
meeting
what I
and
did.
that worked. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
link, the commentary for the service worked, but we had to do a second try.
I'm so glad you persevered.
We are
I
too.
knew it would be good.
Well, let me welcome you all again and tell you that it's really a privilege to have time with you. And these third Sunday forums are always, excuse me, these third Sunday forums are always a time when we take on a subject that we hope will be helpful and interesting and possibly motivational. And today our subject that we've chosen is this year in the time of COVID, what will your Advent be? I got interested in thinking about this as I sat in Charterhouse for the last many months with all our group activities canceled. We haven't met, in a room with others since March. And when you think about Christmas coming and you think about all the activities we usually have, let's think a moment about a usual year. There are concerts, festivals, all kinds of meetings we have, worship services, we have family gatherings, and of course there's shopping, wrapping gifts, just one layer after another that we have come to know as our preparation for Christmas. And I think sometimes, if we're honest with ourselves, those weeks before Christmas have just become a blur. We don't really have any anchors in them that we just say, oh, I really came to some new understanding during that time, or I really felt that it was something that I wouldn't want to have missed. In fact, as you get into your 80s, like I am, you'll hear people say, well, I'm glad that's over. That was so much work. I had all these people over for dinner and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not one of those. It's always been just a beautiful experience for me and my family. But anyway, what I wanted us to do is in this time when we don't have a lot of choice about gathering, we don't have any choice about even knowing that we're going to have a Christmas meal together. What is Advent going to be this year? And as we think together, I'm hoping that we have some time at the end for us to have some discussion. But what I've chosen to do, the church has a film service called The Work of the People. And what I did is I went into that resource and I chose 4 film clips, and they're each by a different theologian. And so each theologian will be bringing their present understanding of what Advent brings. And I want us to listen to those. And then I want to interweave between them some practical ideas of what you might do in your home with others or by yourself to enrich this Advent season. So if you will stick with me and my wonderful partner, who is featured on our screen by our Faith to Life logo, Jenny, who is our operations manager at the church and is such a gifted person, and she's serving as our technical cohort today. I want to thank her so much because this is her day off. She's doing it on her own time. And, that takes so much out of the weekend for her. But she's very, very happy to do it. So I want to give her a big thank you.
Can I excuse me, Eileen, we talked to Dean and Grace Swanson and they're waiting to be let into the meeting. I don't know if somebody's paying attention to that. Thank you.
Did you hear that, Jenny? We have someone who wants to get in. There they are.
I suspect there will be more too, because Grace just posted the correct link on our Facebook page.
Oh, good.
So you may have some.
Here comes Jan.
Good.
What do I do?
Thanks, Grace. Thanks, Jenny.
And I am glad to see my daughter on because she wanted to be, and so she made it. I'm sorry I'm having this little frog problem. So no one really knows when the observance of Advent began. However, in the 400s, Saint Gregory of Tours wrote in the history of the Franks that Saint Perpetuus decreed a 3-week fast prior to Christmas for the Christians of that time. Now, the Advent season today is, as you know, a 4-week period before Christmas that is to prepare us for the celebration of the coming of Christ. And we have filled that time with various traditions in the church and in our homes, as you know. The origin of the word Advent is from the Latin word adventus, which simply means coming or arrival. And so there's no mystical meaning in terms of the name of it. Dean, I think you need to mute your mic, if you will. Okay?
I am muted.
He was muted. I think it's Jan and John.
Someone isn't muted, but anyway, maybe Jenny can mute persons so that we have no override there. Thank you. So for our session today, these 4 films will, I'm not saying that each of them is something that each of us will take and that will be our definition of Advent, but rather it's a way of looking at what we might think about and what we might gain from someone else's view. And I was a little amazed at how different they approached what they said, although all of them have the deep meaning that we know Christ's birth means. The first one that we are going to hear and watch is called, well, first of all, before I do that, I was mentioning that I'm going to give some examples of things you can do at home. And I have used this book, Faithful Families, that has, by its author, Tracy Smith, the idea of creating sacred moments at home. So when I talk about these ideas, they're coming from this book in between the films. So the first film is called The God That Is Coming, and it's by Kelly Brown Douglas. And Professor Douglas is an Episcopal priest and the inaugural dean of the Episcopal Divinity School at Union Theological Seminary. And so we'll start the film now, and then we'll pick it up afterwards. So we hope we can go to the magic. We're not getting sound, Jenny. Jenny, sound. Oh, Marita, you made it.
We don't have sound.
No, we don't either. I don't either. There's no sound.
So I mentioned in the chat, if there's a function in Zoom, Jenny may know it, that might not be the problem. But when you start the sharing process and you're behind the scenes selecting the window that's going to be shared, you have to click a box that's way at the bottom that says use computer sound for that to accompany whatever it is that you share. And maybe she knows that and it's working. I don't know. Maybe that's a different problem.
I will text her.
Oh, we got it now.
When we talk about Advent, Advent is that season where we're talking about the God that is coming, right? And so here's the thing about what that Advent reminds us of, that God is always coming toward us. God never turns God's back on us. God's always coming toward us. We are called to move toward God. And so we are to recognize and see how God is coming toward us. God is coming toward us always in movements toward justice. And we move towards God by joining God in the movement toward justice, right? And so Advent reminds us that God is always, always coming toward us. And not esoterically, but in movements toward justice, toward freedom, which always are these perfect reflections of God's love. Our task is to go toward God. That's the Advent season to me. That's what it reminds us of. That we have people that must be going toward the God that is coming toward us. And we do that through acts of justice.
And what do we do when we get to God? When we go toward the
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. There was a commercial a long time ago when I'm a baby boomer, when they first introduced instant soup. And a little kid outside said, "Is it soup yet?" Guess what? It's not soup yet, because as long as there's one person that does not understand the justice and feel the justice of God, and one person that is not free to live fully into the sacredness of who God has created them to be, well, guess what? We ain't there yet. And so it's almost a moot question. Just keep going until you get there, until everybody can say, I'm free. And so we aren't there yet.
what I liked about this film was that it puts Advent away from being a passive experience on our part, that we just don't sit and wait. And I think there's a great message in that we are to be actively moving toward God. And that in the way she puts it, which, it could be the subject of the rest of this session if we wanted to take the time. But the way she puts it is, well, how do you know you're moving toward God? And if you heard it correctly, she was saying, when you are joining in justice and seeking justice and freedom for all, you know you're moving toward God, because that's God's activity. So, of course, it correlates that if we are moving toward injustice, then we're moving away from God. And so in this time of Advent, one of the things we can ask ourselves, I think, is, are we moving toward justice and freedom for all? And that's a big responsibility, isn't it? But it's a huge thing to think about during this Advent time. Now, the fathers that are ancestors and people who have always been trying to make this a meaningful period have always seen the passage of time, the movement through time, as such an important part of Advent. And you will recognize right away, the first one I'm going to mention is what we do in the sanctuary through Advent is light the Advent candles, that we mark the weeks off that are coming, that we are walking through, that we are wading through, that to bring us to the revelation of God through Christ and Christ's birth. And so these rich traditions we're going to miss this year. And of course, being very concerned that we not lose those traditions, our church is doing something to help us. And we're all going to be getting in our mail candles and a holder for a Advent wreath, so that we can, with the devotional that's going to be with it, we can mark the weeks in our home. And I would suggest that if you don't have an Advent wreath and you get this, you go out and find some fir or pine and clip off some of the ends of it and bring it in and make your wreath, because the green of the fir and the green of our Christmas trees, of course, represent new life and the belief and knowledge that even though we in the north are in the dead of winter, there's life going on and we will be okay. So don't fail to enjoy an Advent wreath this year in your home. Now, the subjects of the weeks are different sometimes, but usually they're things like the first week may be a subject of hope, and there'll be scriptures in relationship to that, or preparation, or joy, or love. There are things to ground our thoughts about for that week and help us in enriching Advent. And then there's another tradition that we have always observed in our family, and that's the Advent calendar. It's just a way to mark off the days and say, we're moving through this, we're moving toward the birthday of Christ. And there are all kinds of beautiful, beautiful Advent calendars. I've seen on TV documentary where they showing the Christmas markets in Europe, And in one of them, I saw that there was in one village a huge Advent calendar for the whole village made out of wood. And a little figure comes out every day during Advent and dances around and sings. And I always thought, gee, I'd like to be standing in that square and enjoy that Advent calendar. I can't suggest anything that elaborate to you, but this year I might suggest a different kind of Advent calendar that is suggested in the book I mentioned. And it's taking a December calendar with space to write on it. And for you or if you were in a family setting, choose a day of each week where you will do an act of kindness. Fill it with acts of kindness during December, so that in each day, there's someone who is making real the good news of Christmas. And then maybe meet at the end of the meal one time a week if you're with family members in your home, and just talk about what this experience of doing act of kindness meant to you and what it might have meant to the recipient. You know, if we're going to move toward God, how can we reflect on what that experience is as we learn how to give, which of course the season of Advent is all focused on what it means to give. And I think this would be a very, especially if there are children in the home, might be something that you might suggest to if you have grandchildren. I think it would be a very meaningful thing to have an Advent calendar that this year marks acts of kindness that we do during this month. Those are both examples of marking the days, of moving through it, of not just waiting, but to have meaningful and enriching ways to mark the time. The second film we're going to see is by Richard Rohr. And of course, we've been reading Richard Rohr. And so I was very anxious to see what this Franciscan friar would say about Advent. And he is, if you haven't read him or been around his work, he is a very well-known author and spiritual director and writer. And in this film, he speaks of what Advent can reveal to us. And so we will now hope that we can get going, the welcoming of a bigger mind.
Well, Advent, as you know, was always the 4 weeks preceding Christmas to supposedly ready us for the new, ever new coming of Christ. Inside the monastery.
Come on. Well,
well, everybody, we are attempting. So let me just reload that video really quick. Hang on.
I wonder if it would help if some of us turned off our video, just lower bandwidth for a minute. Yeah, I love that, Catherine Sullivan.
I think it's just my internet. Let me just restart it. Give me just a moment.
Well, Advent, as you know, was always the 4 weeks preceding Christmas to supposedly ready us for the new, ever new coming of Christ. Inside the monastery.
I'm sorry, Eileen, I think there might be something wrong with that file. So if it'd be okay, why don't we go to the next one?
Okay, let me say a few things before we do. Just what Roar is saying in this video, and it's very short when it's only 3 minutes, but what he's saying is this is a time for us to seek wisdom. That wisdom can be revealed to us through this experience of moving toward God, and that we can, because of that, we can learn things that we don't learn other times. One of the things he said in the video that I wrote down, because I think it's so important for us to kind of mull this any time of the year, is that so often we are seeking information rather than transformation. Mull that around a little bit. You know, what we so often do is just have an attitude, well, I know I've read that scripture before. I know what it says. Or I've done so many of these Christmas things, I know what they're going to be like. And rather than come with a more open attitude of in the Advent season of what can I learn that will really help me grow more spiritually and more with more understanding? What is it that will help me move closer to God? So Roar is inviting us to seek wisdom in this video, and I thought it was a applicable thing for everyone during this time in this information age that we're living in, to maybe open another door. One of the ways that I suggest that we could do in our homes for this, because it makes us think about others, is I've called it making a center for stars in the sky. I hope you can see this on your screen with the stars that I've made and put on this piece of board. You can go, and get a piece of of blue board from a store, and then make some stars and have them in a dish or a basket nearby. And what you do is you write down joys and concerns. Now we do this in church, the pastor will say, let's share our joys and our concerns. And often when we hear the joys and concerns in the congregation, it opens our minds to think, oh, I hadn't realized that was happening, or I hadn't thought of that as a joy in my life. But it is. It's an opening, a way to open us. So you can't do that in our congregation right now, but we can do it. And we can do it in our homes. And what I've done is I've taken white and yellow paper. The white are for the concerns, and the yellow I have chosen for the joys. And so as I did this, I sat down thinking, what are my joys right now in this time of COVID? And who am I really concerned about in relationships and in their circumstances that I need to keep in prayer? And then if you are in a family setting, which of course helps a lot, that's another thing at the end of a week. Maybe after a meal, you could just share what are the ones you put up, and what are the concerns and joys that you have been thinking about, and what it means, and maybe what actions could be taken to send a letter, or to send some flowers, or to do something in relationship to your concerns. Just another idea of how to enrich Advent in your home. So now let's go on to the next film, which is hopefully going to run. And it is called Undoing the Wrath. And it's by James Allison, who is an English Roman Catholic priest and theologian. He gives a different way of expressing Advent.
Yeah, the Advent story. I mean, what's really nice, I think, about the Advent liturgy is that the readings that are normally set up in the lectionary cycles start with, as it were, something coming which sounds as though it's going to be violent, and it gets less and less violent, and then it ends in something absolutely unremarkable. And that's the remarkable thing about it. It's the undoing of the expectation of
The remarkable is the unremarkable?
Yes, exactly.
It's a hard sell.
Well, Christianity is a hard sell in that sense. Yeah, but it's the...
What gives you hope about the unremarkable?
Because it's the undoing of wrath. The assumption that if God is going to arrive, then it will look wrathful. And the realization, this was even John the Baptist expected that. John the Baptist was pretty thrown by Jesus not being as wrathful as he had expected. And the realization that actually there is no wrath at all in God, that wrath is our wrath, and we're pretty good at it. And that God is going to start undoing all of that from within, starting from the most vulnerable place that a human can be, which is as a baby.
Well, that's a different way of talking about it, isn't it? But just think about it. At the beginning of the scripture that we use in Advent, we're talking about a ruler who is requiring all its subjects to go and register, whether it's convenient or not. And we can imagine that there's going to be punishment if they don't do it. And they're living under, the people are living under subjugation. And it's a very violent subjugation of the Roman Empire. And the story leads us to a stall in a manger, and a manger with a baby in it. So he's used that concept of moving from wrath to a God that doesn't hold wrath. Quite a journey for all of us in our own hearts, I think, to make that same movement, that we can move from holding all the things that make us angry, that we want to lash out at, to coming to the remarkable, unremarkable birth of Jesus Christ. I want to share in terms of how we might mark this in our homes by thinking about what we do with nativity sets. I don't know about you, but I have always been in a home that brought out a nativity set during Advent. And one of the things that we usually do is find a prominent place in our home, and then we put this up at the beginning of Advent, and it's there during each day of Advent. What I'd like to suggest this year is that when you take it out, don't put it up all together, but rather take one character or one piece and put it up in subsequent days. And as you do that, take time to think about, what does that piece represent? What did that person or that animal or that angel provide to the narrative? What difference did it make that they were there? And there's scripture to go with that. You'll see, if you go to your chat screen for a moment and open it up, Jenny's going to put a example of a piece of paper that has on it these hints I'm giving to you. And it will be along with your candles when you get them in the mail. And so it will have the scriptures you could use for each of the pieces of your nativity set as you bring them out one by one until we have the final full picture of what Christmas is when the Christ child is born. Jenny, do you have that?
Yes, ma'am. I put a Word document and a PDF down in the chat. So if you all hover over your screens and click the chat button, it will pop up on the right-hand side and you'll see those documents there and you can open them.
Okay. There will be a copy coming to you with the other things I've mentioned, so you don't have to do that right now, but if you'd like to, you can have it so you can print it off. And it will give you these hints that I have suggested that you might find helpful in enriching your Advent. So now we're going to go to the last film, and it's called Upsetting the Pyramid. It really fits well with what we heard in the last video. This is by Diane Butler Bass, who is an American historian of Christianity, and she writes broadly of American religion and culture. And you'll recognize her work in some of the books we've read at CUMC. Okay.
How should we read the Bible?
Well, you know, I've read the Bible in my lifetime in a lot of different and interesting ways. And so when I was writing Grateful, I had no idea that I was going to wind up reading the Bible through the lens of gifts, grace, and gratitude. And so very familiar stories became new to me when I had this different, set of glasses on. I've done that before in the past with other books that I've written. When I wrote a book called Grounded, which was essentially an ecological theology, I began to read the scripture through the idea of God's presence here with us in the world of nature and the world of neighbors. And so while I was working on that book, the Bible took this surprising twist where all of a sudden the language of up and down, the verticality, God in heaven, began to fade away. And I started seeing how many biblical stories are about God with us. And so there was a theological revolution that went on in my own life and my Bible reading from writing Grounded. And the same thing happened with Grateful. And I should have, I suppose, been ready for it, but I wasn't. And all of a sudden, as I said, stories that were very familiar to me opened up in entirely different ways. A simple one would be like the story of the Magi, which, people fight about that story all the time, especially in the world in which I sort of live and move and have my being, which is around more liberal biblical scholars. And everybody says, oh, that's a metaphor and blah, blah, blah. And did the Magi really come? And did they come on Christmas Day or did they come, later? So people love to fight about that story. But when I read it through this lens of gratitude and gifts and the grace of these things, it was really surprising because all of a sudden, here is Jesus, who is born a peasant into this horrible world of a colonized outpost of the Roman Empire, two parents who are incredibly poor. And the first act of his life is actually in response to something Caesar tells his parents to do. So it's a story of incredible oppression, and it's set up, as this political story, where in response to a census that Caesar Augustus wants, boom, the parents have to go and travel while Mary is pregnant to Joseph's hometown. And so the whole beginning of the story is these people are oppressed slaves, and they just are doing the bidding of Caesar. So you get the story. So the baby's born in a barn, which is probably the least unusual part of the story, because, surprised they even had any money for a hotel. Lucky Jesus, he wasn't born on the street. He was actually born with a roof over his head. So you have this lovely story, and then you get the tale of the Magi, which is about these important people. We sometimes call them the three kings from the ancient songs, or they're just religious leaders or astrologers or whatever they are, but they're important, they're learned, they're rich, and they come and they give gifts to Jesus. And not only do they give gifts, but they give gifts of frankincense and gold and myrrh. Well, that story right there is about the upsetting of the pyramid. Because in the ancient world, there was no such thing as a king who would give gift to a poor baby. But instead, the parents of an enslaved population, at some times in their lives, would be demanded to give gifts to Caesar, to give gifts to the ruler. And so in the very first stories that we have of Jesus, there's this deep story that will come out again in Jesus' life about the overturning of these tables, is that it's not about the oppressed having to give obedience, worship, glory to the rulers, but instead here the kings come and worship the baby. And that to me is just so beautiful. So it was a very familiar story, and as I was just in the early process of writing the book when Christmas came up this past year, and it just meant so much to me. It was so different than I'd ever seen it before. So all of a sudden,
a little more radical than like Starbucks coffee cups or whatever.
It's very radical, and it's wonderful, and I loved it. It was one of the things that helped to brighten my Christmas this year. I was having trouble sort of finding my way into the joy of the season, and the whole idea that kings would bring a gift to a baby held in oppression, born to parents who were functionally slaves, just made my heart sing this past Christmas. So I saw a very familiar story, a story I've known my entire life. I saw it differently because of having these lenses of thinking of the world through gratitude.
I really appreciated that film because it sort of gave me confidence that my experience, which has been in studying scriptures and in thinking about them, that they do become new again and again and again. It's so easy for us to think we've got that. I understand that. I know what happened. But just think of the fact that one of the things we've called of these magi through our our lives is the wise men. What wisdom did they have to recognize that in this child, there was a different kind of power, a power that was not to destroy, but a power to bring life and love to creation, to reveal it, that is God's intention. And so I would invite us that this Advent season that we read again, we study again, we think again, to find new meaning for our lives in this time of COVID. And I would like to suggest to you joining a group. We have a Advent book that Elizabeth has chosen for us. All Earth is Waiting. And they're available in the office. And we are forming groups now that online you would be able to sit like you are today and talk about some of the ideas for this Advent through this study. All Earth is Waiting by Katie Z. Dawson. Just another way to enrich our Advent. So now we have a few minutes left in this time together, and I would appreciate any comments or questions or anything you would like to share, maybe a tradition you've done in your family all these years that it has deep, deep meaning that someone else might find also meaningful. So does anyone have something they'd like to share?
I just want to pick up on Catherine's comment. I think she made it twice about patience. And I think about the power of that, especially this Advent season. So it's really a gift to think about how to lean into the ache of it all. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that.
Good.
And I'm grateful for the Diana suggestion of reading it with a new lens, and also the man before with just turning everything upside down, and that ties in with Mary's Magnificat, and which summarizes it, and so that's exciting for me.
Good.
And I'll read it. I will reread it now with new eyes. I'm
Good.
looking forward to
Good.
it.
Blessing. Any other comment?
I'm grateful that the Spirit is always at work in us. And that Spirit is met by the coming of the Christ child. This kind of in and out process is always at work in us. What is within us is met by what is coming from outside of us. And oh, the joy that happens when they get together in the birth of a Christ child.
Right. Great.
Aileen, I'd like to thank you. This has been very meaningful. It's a great presentation, and I hope everybody takes to heart what you've said, what you've presented for us, and try to make this a different kind of Advent.
Well, I hope so. I think that one of the things that happened when we went to Pakistan is we had a missionary who had been there for about 6 years. And he spoke to us and he said, this isn't going to be easy. There are going to be a lot of adjustments. But what I'd suggest that you do is you burn the bridges that you walked over. And at the time I heard that, I didn't know what that meant really. But while I was there, I observed the people who were constantly comparing what it was like in the United States with what it was like in Pakistan were miserable. If we sit this Advent and think what Christmas was like in other Advents and compare it to what we can do in this Advent, we're going to be miserable.
That's wisdom. There's real wisdom in that.
That's right. And so if we can think of it, you know, the Desert Fathers said, get out into a place where you're not around everyone and get some new understandings. And I'm hoping that we think of this social distancing in a different way during Advent and recognize this is 1 year. Next year, we're going to be back together again. What can we put into this year that may bring us such greater understanding of this spiritual path that's available to us, and capitalize on this time of COVID rather than resenting that we can't be together.
This time of COVID can be like wandering in the desert for 40 years, the way the Jews did.
That's right. That there's all kinds of symbolism and references in Scripture to getting alone, to getting solitude, to meeting God in places where there isn't a lot of traffic. So with that, I will end our session today and thank you for coming again.
Thank you.
And hope that you will be intentional during the next weeks. Think of ways that might surprise yourself and others in how we can enrich this time that we are passing through to meet God in all the freedom and justice that God brings. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Aileen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Aileen, for your wisdom.
Thank you, Aileen, very much.
Thank you. That was very good.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed.
Thank you, everyone.
Aileen, is there a way that you could send us those clips that didn't work?
Yeah,
And we can play them ourselves?
This whole broadcast will be available on our website. And if you have any problem with that, you can just email Oliver or Jenny and they will put you to the right space and you can watch it again. Hopefully we can get those videos working better. I'm sorry for that, but that's the time of COVID.
Opportunity. Thank you, Aileen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Blessings all.
Yes, blessings.
Bye-bye, and thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Glad.